Howdy everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be going over conveyors. So what we're going to do today is go over the different types of conveyors, what their actual functions are, the different purposes for them, and even how to troubleshoot them. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Now when it comes to conveyors, their purpose is very simple. They're used to transfer items between different inventories, and that could be components, ores, ingots, and ammo, up to bottles, tools, and stuff like that. Conveyors can go in different shapes, where you got your straights, your 90s, and your T's, and they also have sorters to help you organize different inventories. And then there's also some that have the same function, just have a different look to them, as well as being able to seal a ship if you want to keep it pressurized. You can also use pipes that have a junction the same as the square one, and it has straights, which all three of these are the same. The only thing that's different is the look. They will all transfer the same materials, same ingots, etc. Has a 90, a T, and a sorter. It also has a four-way, where the square ones only have the T's, or you use the junction block down at the beginning. Another thing is, I know a lot of people are going to be asking, can pipes connect to square? Yes they can, as I've done right here. They work all the same. I can still put a conveyor junction there, I can put cargo container there, and I will be able to transfer stuff through. Works all the same. And then last but not least, we have our conveyor caps and our pipe caps. These are strictly cosmetic, but they do look really cool. I mean, you go ahead and put one on any of these, kind of looks pretty slick. It doesn't do anything, sadly. I wish they had an animation to like open it up, or you can open it and it releases pressure like your hydrogen or something. Same thing with the pipes, but that's really about all they're used for. Because it says high pressure, but doesn't do anything. The next little tip with these is these square or armored conveyors actually do seal in pressurized areas, as long as one of the flat sides is what's facing the outside. So you can actually seal a room off with these just hanging out in the wall. Comes in handy. And if we look, if I get a couple of those, if we look at the left hand of my screen, let me get rid of the GPS points. Airtight, 3 of 6 faces are sealed. That is this face, and this face. Basically the 2 open sides and the braced side are not. So you can actually use it to build a ship and use it on the outside armor, as long as you know which way it's facing. One thing to keep in mind when building conveyor systems is to try to have as little of these junctions as possible. The way Space Engineers works is it calculates the direction an object can go every tick, and it calculates the outcome of those based on how many ports it has at each block. So if you're going from here to here, it might only be a millisecond, but this block has 5 milliseconds more than this one. So sometimes it's just easier to put a 90 in here to go the direction you want. Actually, we can go this way. Try to leave cargo containers and junctions to minimums. That way your game runs a little smoother, and it's not that big of a deal with higher end systems, but if you have an average computer, having 3,000 conveyor junctions is gonna hurt. Just something to keep in mind. Now, when it comes to using conveyors, the one thing you have to keep in mind is making sure you have the large ports with the large port of the conveyor. Now, this does mean the same thing for small ports on small grid ships, but the concept is still the same. When we go to connect, we want to make sure that we're on a port on the inventory we're trying to do. So we'll go from the cargo container, and now we have to go to 2 different directions. So we'll just put a T in here, put a couple straights off of this one, and then a straight there. Now what we want to look for is that everything is green. These little LEDs on here, we're all hooked up, they're all green, so everything should be connected. If you get done placing them and you see that it's yellow, then it means it's not connected. This one is going to show green because it's connected on 2 different fronts. If we go ahead and get rid of the T, you'll show that they go yellow again. So that's just something to keep in mind. Look at the LEDs when you're using them. So now if we go into the inventory, we can see we already have less ice, and that is because it's already gone into the O2H2 generator. So it can go from this large cargo into the O2 generator. And if we look, we have our hydrogen tank over there. It should be pretty much full. Not that one. We want the smaller one. 100%. So it is going in. The one thing to keep in mind with conveyors is that you have to match the ports up. So if you have large conveyors like this, you have to have large ports like this. On large grid, it's pretty easy because pretty much everything has the large ports, so you can just connect it as long as it's one of these yellow squares. When it gets to small grid, say you're building a small ship or a small rover, then that's where it gets a little confusing. When it comes to small grid inventories and moving stuff with conveyors, it can be really confusing because you do have a mixture of small ports and large ports. The one thing to figure out before you start building anything is what it's going to be used for. So what I mean by that is, are you going to be using it as a miner? Are you going to be using it as a welding ship or as a grinding ship? Those two kind of go hand in hand because of the components. A miner that only is going to be carrying ores is fine, because if I get my small grid stuff here, we'll put it where our pipe is, and we go ahead and just put a connection here to connect our other inventory. Once I find the right one, there it is. We got a green light, and if we go ahead and put some, let's say, cobalt ore, we'll just put 5k. If I go ahead and grab that, and I find my large cargo, I'm going to look for the white one. Ores can go through those small ports. It'll actually travel through this. If I were to do the same thing with a large component, say detectors, we'll bring that down to 50. And I try to do the same thing with those, it's not going to go, because these need large ports. Now you can take a large grid junction and use those same large ports on these, but what we tend to do is just build them together. So your inventories will all be touching on the same large grid port. Makes it easy, and that way you don't have to worry about piping. But if you do happen to have that, you made a mistake, whatever it is, you do have the option of just connecting it. Now these aren't going to be even, but it works. We'll say like that. That would connect into there, and that would actually work. Let's go ahead and do that. And I'll just pick those up. Get rid of our small connections here. Put that just how we had it. Now if I were to do the same thing, we have our 50 detector components. Look for our large cargo with the cobalt in it, and now we can move it in there. All because we have the large ones. Now let's say you have welding and grinding. This is what you're going to need. You need large conveyors and large ports to be able to get those larger components from the large cargo to the welder, or from the grinder to the large cargo. Now, one thing to keep in mind is you don't necessarily need large grid for all components. There we go. Now, if I get rid of that one, so we can't transfer anything through it, and I go in here and I do construction components, and let's do it with that. Here's our cobalt and our detector components. Construction components will go through. So if we look, this is everything that will fit through small ports. You have your zone chips, space credits, canvas, data pads, explosives, but thruster components, reactor components, computers, motors, and construction components. And then weapons, ammunitions, materials like ingots, and then your ores. And then most other components, and then all of these will not fit in small containers. So when putting through here, if you go and try to make a welding ship with only small ports, you're not going to be able to. Something to keep in mind when designing a ship. Alright, it looks like a bit of a spaghetti mess, but just to prove a point, with ores and ingots, and especially like thrusters and stuff like that, all you need is the small ports when you're working with small grid. So I can go ahead and put a bunch of ice in here. We'll go ahead and just add a bunch of zeros because we're maniacs. Now, if I do that, and I look up H2, it went in, and I can take it out, and it goes in. You can see it's going down from over here. That works. When it comes to filling up bottles, what you want to make sure you do is have your survival kit. Grab one of those. Either directly connected with the large port, or have your hydrogen tank connected with the large port. Because bottles do not go in small conveyors, remember. So we have one connected with small conveyors, one connected with large ports, which would be the same as large conveyors. We have our hydrogen bottle. Let's go ahead and find our two tanks. It will not go into this one because it uses the small conveyors. It needs the large conveyor. Make sense? I hope so. When you want to get hydrogen from the tanks or oxygen from the tanks to the survival kit, you can use either large or small ports. It does not matter. They both work. Same thing with hydrogen thrusters. This one is connected on top of the hydrogen tank, and you can see it's lit up. If I go ahead and place one, let's just say on top of the grinder because there's no connection point, and I go ahead and connect this to our small cargo, goes green, and you can see it lights up. Gases only need small, so that'll help you out. Now say you're looking to put a turret down on your ship, and it has one big port, and you only have one big port available, but then you also want another one right next to it. Well, as long as you connect those small conveyors on the sides, each one of these will get their ammo. If we go ahead and we do Gatling ammo, there it is. We'll just put 10 in there. We can go into this one, go into large cargo, and put it there. Same thing with this one. If we go to large cargo, it can go. As long as it's got these small conveyors, you'll be fine with those. Now say you want a turret like the assault cannon turret. Well, this one only has one small port, and the location you have is a large port. What we do in that instance is we use something called a conveyor converter. It's got 3 small ports on one side, small ports on all the 4 edges, and then a large port on the bottom. You can slap that down, grab your artillery, well, in this case the assault cannon turret, and put it on, because it's got the small port right in the middle. So now if we go into here and we look for the assault cannon turret, it'll go in. Beautiful. That's how you convert large to small. Not hard. And there's a bunch of different ways. You can use, where is it at? This, the larger conveyor junction, has sides with small ports on it, and then large ports on the others. So you can actually use that, throw down some small thrusters, and it'll work all the same. Or you can put your Gatling turret right on the front, or even on the side, if you can get it to line up, which I don't think I can. No, because it's not close enough. So when it comes to troubleshooting, you have the piping and everything going on. You got it going, everything's built, put together, but you're not getting thrust to these thrusters, but you are getting it to this one and to this one. Well, this one sits right on top of the hydrogen tank, so it's going to get hydrogen from that until it runs out. This one gets it directly from the O2 generator, but we're not getting any over here. So let's try and figure that out. And this is the basis for all troubleshooting when it comes to inventories and pipes. Just follow the line. Like I said earlier, look for these green lights. Some of these won't have green lights on them, like any T junctions, but we can see this one's yellow, which means it is disconnected somewhere. So we follow it along, and we see we've just missed a 90 over here. Hook it up, we're now green, our thrust comes back on. And then we can also see this one is yellow because we have a 90 missing here. Pretty simple. But what happens if I place a thruster there and instead of a 90 I have a T. Because T's will allow things to be green even when connected only on one side. So make sure to follow it all the way. Because if you have that covered with armor, say something like that, and I can only see the green, I don't want to assume that it's connected to the other edges. Because this one I can still see is yellow. This one, if I look down, can still see it's yellow. So I know there's a break in there somewhere, and it's going to be here. And there we go. We got our flame back, we got green, and we still have yellow here though. So there's probably a break on that side. And there it is. There we go. Now we're green here, we're green down at the bottom, and we're green here. So just keep in mind with T-junctions, they can be a little deceiving. Check all edges of it. Hopefully that's a little bit better of an introduction than I know a lot of other ones do. The explanation is pretty simple. It's just a matter of figuring out what you're wanting to do and what's going to be going through your pipes and putting it in the right spot to match. And not all ships are going to be able to do everything, so keep that in mind. And that's why we build different ships for different purposes with different inventory sizes to make our life easier. Now, our last thing is probably going to be the little more confusing one, and that's going to be sorters. When it comes to sorters, they have different options that you can use with them that kind of confuse people sometimes. The first one is going to be drain all, which literally just means it's transferring everything from this side of the sorter. You can see the arrow going in this direction and put everything over here. It's going to try and empty out behind it. Blacklist is just what it does not allow past it. So if you want everything except ores to go through the sorter, it will. And then you have whitelist, which allows only this. So if you want this container to be used for only ammo, it will do that. So if we change this to ammo, whitelist, and drain all, it is now pulling all of that ammo through here. But it should not pull anything else. Now, if we make our second connection with large ports, we go into here, look for our large container, and we can transfer this stuff back over here. All of our ammo stays there. Let's go ahead and put the rest of that ammo there, and we'll just put the rest of this in here too. Now that we have those large ports on the other side, we can go ahead and transfer all of that. Now say I put the ammo in there by accident. It's going to go ahead and transfer everything by itself because of the sorter, because we have it set to ammo. If I go in to our sorter and say, as well as ammo, we want ores. We can see the cobalt coming over, and it'll take all of that. We'll help it out a little bit, and then it takes the ice. So it'll keep going until this container fills up, and then it'll stop. But it will keep putting stuff into here as long as the container has space. One thing you can do to make this with sorters is put a sorter there. And then if we get a small connector, they're called nowadays, but they used to just be called ejectors. There it is. We go ahead and put that on there. Go to control panel, the small connector, we will do throw out on, and then the second sorter, we will whitelist stone. So if we look down here, put stone, add, drain all, then come back. We can go to our large cargo. Say we just got done drilling a nice little mine, and we have a crap ton of stone. 10k up. It's going to continue to throw stone out. That's how you get rid of excess stone out of your miners. It's just fancy work with sorters, small connectors, and some conveyoring. But that's going to be about it for conveyor systems. They're not as hard as you like to think they are, and as long as you're thinking in direct in going from one to the next, you'll be fine. Just plan it out, know what you're doing, and know what you're hauling. You'll make it through. But with that, hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you in the next one. Have a good day, everybody.